Hello YouTube. Today's video is on snares, and snares can definitely be challenging to make, and it can take a bit of tweaking to get them to feel right. The snare that I'm going to be making today is going to be a drum and bass snare because oftentimes they have a lot more nuance and a lot more character to them. So yeah, without any further ado, I'm going to get right into it. Serum 2 already ready, and I've also placed a MIDI note, G4, which lands me pretty close to the 200 Hertz mark, which is a very common place to have your snare at. So to start off with, I'm going to get a sine wave, and I'm going to get a little volume envelope on this at about an eighth. And just like with the kick tutorial, I can turn the random phase to 0 and the phase position can go to 90 degrees. That way it starts mid waveform cycle for a bit more click at the beginning. And then I'm going to set this attack time on the main envelope to 0.1. So we have a sharp click. The next thing to do is get a bit of a pitch envelope going. And this is going to be attached onto the course. Hold Alt, Shift, and click to make it unipolar. I'm going to set the rate to an eighth, and I'm going to have it really low. Okay, and then I'm just going to play with the amount and just bring this down quite a lot. You really don't want it to be a whole lot, because as soon as it becomes a bit too extreme, you start getting that really lasery feel, which is not very natural at all. So somewhere about there seems quite nice to me. And then I'm going to get an additional envelope, and this one is going to be once again on the pitch, but it's going to be much shorter. So I'm going to just get that and attach it to the course pitch. Now we've got a bit more of a click. It's like the striking of the drum itself. What I often do is I actually have a moment where it's completely at the top value. You get a little moment where it's just got a very high frequency hit. If I change the rate to 1/32, that gives me more space to work with, and I can be more detailed with the shape. And then because of this flat point at the top of this pitch envelope, we can play with the pitch amount to choose exactly which frequency it's being held on. For now, I'm just going to go with that. The next element that constitutes a snare is the noise tail, the actual snares themselves that rattle after you've hit the snare drum. I'm going to set another envelope, set it to an eighth, and just pop on some white noise. That should be snare sounding already. If I also pop that noise in a high pass filter, then I can just clear it out of the way, set it to like 210 Hertz. So it's just out of the way of the fundamental here, and make sure that oscillator A isn't going through the filter, and make sure the noise oscillator is. Then if I flip over to the effects tab and grab myself a distortion, then these two sounds should squash together. Go maybe soft clip. Or the new soft saturation. Pretty nice. To give this snare a little bit more character, I'm going to do some EQing pre-distortion and attach that onto a nice plucky envelope as well, so I can give it a little bit more punch. So I'm just going to grab myself an EQ and pop that before the distortion, get myself a boost, type in 193 Hertz here, because that's around where our fundamental is. And now what you can do is you can have this attack envelope go on this boost, and you can even have it cross over that halfway mark so that then it's actually dipping towards the second half of the snare. That way you can kind of decide how long the fundamental frequency stays in the snare. And then additionally, I might put this envelope on the frequency so it slides into that fundamental. And then find a nice boost up in the highs to give it a little bit more character up there. Nice. This is going to be moving as well. So you can get that swooshy sound, and you get a very different feel if you have it going the opposite way. That's quite satisfying. Let me try and do a boost on the gain. Very nice. Might have a little bit less gain on this fundamental. So that is pretty much the most basic snare that you can get. At this point, you can export that as just a simple 909 type snare, or you can go ahead and continue layering in more noises and also some character layers. For now, I'm just going to layer in a real drum sample. Go and switch this wavetable to the sample mode, and then go into factory non-tonal, go and find some snare. So if I put that in the filter as well, the high pass, so then the fundamentals aren't clashing. Right. Right, I'm just going to go with this one. It's quite noisy, but it definitely adds a little bit of extra juice to the sound. I'll attach it to the same envelope as this noise. So once again, it's clean for the transient. What I can do now is maybe get some more noise by getting a second filter going, put oscillator B in the filter, and I can set this to maybe a band pass, take the resonance out, give it a drive. I'm going to turn the random phase down for this as well, so we have a nice consistent signal, popping that in the noise as well. Then I'm going to just FM from the noise. Just giving this layer some unison voices and some detune to just push it out into the sides a little bit more. And that is another nice characterful noise layer that I can use this band pass to determine where it's sitting. And just find a nice frequency range. I could almost even have the band pass move with our plucky envelope. Let's have a look. That's pretty nice sounding. And then if I just give these extra layers a bit of mixing. Right, that's sounding pretty good. If I put this 7 semitones higher, gives it quite a nice character as well. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to get another instance of Serum. I'm going to be making a character layer. All this layer really is just some additional harmonics that we can layer into our snare. Go with G4 here, just like the other note, then just pop this on a sine wave. What I'm going to do is maybe just put that 3 semitones up, grab myself another oscillator, and just give it some strange harmonics. Nice. Turn that down, and then FM from B. So let's make a new envelope now, set it to an 8th, and do a similar shape to what we did for the noise, and just have a little spike to just bring in these harmonics. And again, when these harmonics become present, drastically changes the feel of your snare drum. That's quite interesting. And if I bring the random phase down for both of these, then we'll have a nice consistent signal. Playing with the octave, maybe the semitones. All of these can work very well for this. So it's just a matter of taste. What is it that you want to have for your snare drum? And then you can even add some unison voices to this. Or keep it nice and tight down the center, which I think is what I'm going to do for now. And I'm going to pop this in a high pass filter as well, so we don't have any clashing with our fundamental once again. Much cleaner. And then maybe some phase distortion from self. Very nice. I can maybe add a bit more noise to this. High pass, different noise type. Yeah, just like the pink noise here in the same envelope. I can also pop this through this second high pass filter, which I'll take the resonance out and give it a bit of drive. If I route these both to different mixer tracks now, go snare, body, then accent layer. I can blend the two layers in from here. And you can see that you don't actually need too much of it to come in and change the feel of your snare and make it a whole lot more interesting. And on this effect layer, you can manipulate the harmonics even more by maybe adding some wave shaping, which is fantastic. Add on a frequency shifter, which can be used either to actually manipulate the frequencies of the harmonics or to add some ring modulation, because it also has a ring mod feature. And I'll just quickly explain how this works. It's shifting all the frequencies by a set amount. If it's moving about 40 hertz, then down in the low end, 40 hertz can be up to an octave. But as you go higher up in the frequency spectrum, when you get to the thousands, 40 hertz isn't actually that much. So essentially with a frequency shifter, the effect is diminishing the higher up in the frequency spectrum you go, which can get you some really interesting pitch shifting effects. Because percussion is already atonal, this shift in frequencies can often bring you to a much more pleasing and much more realistic feeling drum sound. And then the other way that you can use this frequency shifter is with the ring mod. And the ring mod is pretty much just very fast volume modulation. So because it's going up and down in volume really quick, you end up getting a less thick sound. So if you want to make any of your noise layers or accent layers thinner, you can do it by using this ring modulation mode. See how the effect makes it just a bit less sharp? Which can be quite natural sounding. At the moment, it's got, I think, enough layers, but you can go even crazier with this. You can layer more noises, you can layer more claps. But for now, I'm going to get to the last stage, which is to just group whatever layers that you already have and do some group processing to them. First of all, what I like to do is a little bit of reverb in the form of either convolution or some other reverb plugin. But I really enjoy the sound of convolution, so I'm just going to go and find maybe this large hall. Delete this first bit. It's quite nice. Then if I just get rid of some of that low end and some of the high end as well. just sculpting the character of that reverb, give it a bit of a fade out. And then I'm just going to automate the wet level. We can have that clean for the transient as usual and come up for the tail. About there is pretty nice. And then I can just make this value substantially smaller. I'll go with 5%. Maybe a little bit more. Why not? Yeah, it's not much. You don't really want it to be a noticeable reverb. You just kind of want it to bind all the different layers together and add a bit of that flavor. We can also do some compression and just bring that down. And playing with the release on this compressor determines how quickly that noise is allowed to come back up. So if you have a longer release, it squashes down that noise for longer, whereas with a shorter release, you keep a lot of that noise. So it's up to you. Add a transient processor, tighten it up a little bit, and then give it a little bit more boost on the actual transient itself, depending on how punchy you want it. We can add some distortion to the group. I might use this wave shaper. And then maybe pop that before the compression. Yeah, I'll have it after the limiter, but before the transient processor, so I can tighten it back up after the distortion has been added, because distortion will exaggerate whatever envelopes you have going. So yeah, to finish this off, I'm just going to add a little bit of clipping to make sure that it's nice and punchy. So if I get the waveform, make this a hard clip and just add some drive to this. Lovely. I'm just going to export that out now. Turn that down a bit. And then you can fade it and make it even shorter. And this is definitely quite a slammed snare, so you don't have to go as hard with all of the different distortion effects and stuff like that. If I go onto my group here, turn off the wave shaping and have a bit less of that clipping. Then you get a lot more of an open feeling snare. So it just depends on how slammed you want to make your drums, which is the advantage of making your own drum samples, because when you get sample packs, oftentimes the snares will look something like this one, where it's already got a lot of compression and distortion already baked into the sample. So with making your own drums, you can decide exactly how clean you want your samples to be. And of course, it all comes down to practice, because every time you're going to go ahead and make a snare, it's going to be different, because it's the culmination of so many small decisions that any tiny differences will affect the end result. So yeah, just keep making them, and I promise you the quality of your drum samples will go up. I'm going to conclude the video here. I hope you enjoyed this video or learned something about synthesizing your own snare drums. It's very important to note, for this kind of drum design, it's so much to do with the volume balance of these different layers and also their envelope shapes, because ultimately that is what's going to be creating the character and the cohesion between these different sounds. If you want to support the channel, then leave a like on this video and subscribe. With all that being said, I will see you in the next one.